Okay, good evening to one and all. My name is Kian Lam. I'm from the local community engagement office. Before we start the program proper, maybe just a couple of housekeeping matters. First of all, emergency exits, 2 behind, 2 in front. Okay? And of course, may I request that you switch your mobile gadgets to silent mode? Okay. I'm seeing a lot of new faces. Can I just have a show of hands? How many of you are visiting NTU for the first time? Wow, so many. So I must actually promote a little bit, right? So again, welcome to NTU, one of the top 15 most beautiful campuses in the world. Top 15. And this is a mini city in itself because we have about 33,000 students. And if you add in the faculty, admin staff, and researchers, 40 over 1,000 people on this campus. Now it's a bit quiet because the students have gone for vacation. And we have a big campus. For those who are not aware of it, you can actually visit university campus anytime you like. You know why? Because university campuses are public premises. So you can come to NTU to enjoy the nice blue track for your morning or evening brisk walk. And of course, we have nice eatery. If you go to our North Spine area, as I said, it's a mini city. If you want supermarket, we have supermarket. You want restaurant, you have restaurants. You want bank, you have a bank. You have a travel agency and so forth. A lot of them, very nice. So come visit more because over the last few years, NTU has transformed to another, as I said, become a mini city. A lot of new buildings coming up, and like the building next to us, the Hive, the one is designed by Mr. Thomas Heatherwick, the guy who designed the 2012 London Summer Olympics quadrant. Okay, a very nice learning hub for our students with the future classroom setup and so forth. Come and take a look. Of course, some new ones with the Wave, the new indoor sports hall that is built with 90% of wood. So another new hub at the northern area called the Arc. Same thing, new tutorial rooms for the undergraduates. I love all this. So back to this, Did You Know Monthly Talk series is one of the many initiatives that we have rolled out over here at NTU. NTU has been doing quite well in education research, of course ranking as well. If you are not aware, actually we are ranked number 11th in QS World ranking. It's very high, number 11 in the world. But you see, although we are ranked so high now, do Singaporeans feel proud of it? Probably they are a bit indifferent. So one of the things that we do is to conduct this type of a talk so that we can invite our top professors to talk about their area of expertise. And at the same time, to also help Singaporeans understand and appreciate research and its benefits. I think that is very important. It also provides a good platform for our professors to showcase what they know. Now, they can be very famous internationally in their own area, but to many Singaporeans or friends here, you may not know them. So this is a good platform for them as well. Now, today we are very fortunate to have Dr. Gupta. He's going to talk about this Bitcoin and beyond, the world of cryptocurrencies. So the flow of the program is this. We'll do this talk followed by a panel discussion and then a Q&A. So if you have any questions, just hang on to it and then you can ask later. So let me introduce a bit about the speaker. Dr. Sourav Sen Gupta is a lecturer at our School of Computer Science and Engineering at NTU. Prior to this, he was affiliated with the RC Bose Center for Cryptology and Security at Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata. He received his doctorate in computer science from Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata in 2014. At present, he takes an active interest in the evolving research areas in Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchain technology, as well as in systems security and applications of machine learning in cybersecurity. So without further ado, shall we put our hands together to welcome Dr. Gupta.
Good evening, everyone. It was raining and still such a show up. Thanks a lot. I know how hard it had been because I came here around at 6, I guess. So since 6 till about 6:30 or 6:40, it was raining heavily, quite heavily. Thanks a lot. Anyway, all right. Thanks to the group who invited me out here. I understand that NTU has been one of the pioneering schools in several aspects in Singapore, but this outreach program is something that's completely new to me. In fact, NTU is quite new to me. I have been here only for about 5 months, a semester. So I joined NTU in January. It's really a nice experience to be here, and it's lovely to meet you all. So as you might know, if I come from academia or if I come from a research platform, it's really hard for us to bridge the gap and talk about technology or talk about anything technological in a way that really appreciated by all. So if you find any of the topics that I am speaking about just too weird or too jargonish or something that you have no clue about, feel free to stop and ask a question. It's fine. I'll go slow and then we'll just have an interaction and figure out the details. Okay, quick disclaimers. Maybe a couple of disclaimers. Let's see. So I hope this is on. So when you think of Bitcoin or when you think of cryptocurrencies, which is what we are going to talk about today, what do you think first? Give me a line or a couple of words about Bitcoin. What do you think? What is Bitcoin? It's about data mining, okay. What else? Value? It has value, all right, okay. What else? Sorry, who said it? Electronic currency, all right, okay. Anything else? Sorry? Volatile, highly volatile, yes, sure, of course. Well, anything that has value for some time would, anyway, I do not know. So we'll see. Okay, so I kind of gauge my audience by asking this, whether to figure out what you think about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So there are a few things that comes to mind when you talk about this, right? This topic, the Bitcoin overall. So one is, of course, that. So value, volatility. Yeah, sorry for that. I didn't cause it, but well, got a huge dip. It's again sort of stabilizing out here. And that is, I think, a couple of days back or 3 days back data. I didn't really refresh it, sorry. But that's from a website called CoinMarketCap, which is something that we often follow to figure out what the current price and what's the market value of these cryptocurrencies are. And those, according to the market cap, are the top few right now. So let's start off with Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Bitcoin Cash, EOS, Litecoin, Cardano, and there are a bunch of them. Okay, so that's one picture that we all have in our mind when we talk about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. The second picture, which might have come in news more often than not, is this. If you know this, you would recognize immediately. If you don't know this, thankfully, it's Silk Road. It's a deep web marketplace, mostly for drugs and things alike, which is supposed to be illegal. Also, to some extent, for, say, hidden art or rather precious art, electronics that you can't buy in a country, and so on and so forth. So anything that's quote-unquote illegal in a space could be bought here. Could be, when I say it's not really active as of now. Silk Road was shut down by FBI a few years back. Silk Road 2.0 came up, that was shut down as well. And there are other marketplaces around, but that's something that we often relate to Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. Because of so-called anonymity of transactions. So Bitcoin is really, really famous or infamous, whichever side of the coin you come from, for its anonymity. So it supposedly delinks your personal identity from your financial identity. So you can do financial transactions where you're not involved as the person you are. That's another picture, which is mostly from law enforcement agencies and other places of the government. We look at this and we say, well, that's not pretty good. That's not good at all, right? There's a third point to it. So those are two faces of the coin, but hey, it's a digital coin, so it can have many faces. So that's your third face. And the third face is a little different. The third phase is what is possibly the cause of Bitcoin coming into existence. And it's essentially liberty. This line out here is the last line from something called the Crypto Anarchy Manifesto. So crypto lets you do some anarchist movements and anti-establishment movements. Bitcoin is probably one of the most effective realizations of an anti-establishment movement in finance. So that's the third phase of Bitcoin. I'm not sure. Do you know this guy? Anyone? It's like a graphic, yes? No. Yeah, WikiLeaks. He's the founder of WikiLeaks, is Julian Assange. He is also a manifestation of the crypto-anarchist movement in the 90s. All right, so let's see. A lot of us are here possibly because we fear or we are happy or we are excited about this big thing called the cryptocurrency bubble or the Bitcoin bubble, right? So whether we are really into the bubble and what's going to happen in the financial domain with this is my first disclaimer, is nothing to do with me. So I should come forth very clearly that as an NTU technical person, I really am not interested as much in the financial movement of cryptocurrencies. I don't come from business school. If I had, I would probably be. I come from a computer science background, so all my interest lies in the technical details of how a cryptocurrency works. And that's my goal, to tell you about the technical side of Bitcoin in as simple way as possible, so that we understand what's going on. What is this Bitcoin and so on. To be clear, we do not really care so much about how a currency is made. So when we say there is a dollar note that I'm carrying in my pocket, we do not really go into which paper did MAS use for this, which ink did they use, how did they manufacture it. We don't care about it as much. Quite naturally, because we have no authority of manufacturing it anyway. Even if we knew all the ingredients, we had no right of manufacturing that coin or currency. And that's perfect. That's an establishment-based currency. But Bitcoin, just on the other hand of the story, is not a centralized establishment-based currency. So it's probably nice to know what are the ingredients. If you want, maybe you can go ahead and make something alike. It's perfectly fine to make another Bitcoin or Bitcoin-like object called cryptocurrency and then use it as currency in your own domain. That's perfectly fine. So we need to know what are the technical details behind it. We'll take a look at that. To clarify, if you have a lot of questions regarding the financial aspects of it, regarding the governance aspect of it, regarding the regulations aspect of cryptocurrencies, please wait for the panel discussion. As you see, the names up here, we have two from two different points of view on cryptocurrency trading. One from the regulation side, Mr. Mohanty, who would be talking on behalf of MAS and talk about regulations and governance around cryptocurrencies. And the other one, Mr. Peter Sin, would talk about a lot about the investments and the finance side of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So just hang on, we'll come there. Good, so cryptocurrencies. If this was an undergraduate computer science class, I would start with crypto and then go slowly into currency. Here we switch it around. We start with currency. So you all know what currency is. So without further ado, that's what currency is, right? You understand currency as a medium of exchange. And that's the first and foremost role of currency. You can also call it as a store of value, which is a fine term for it. It has value, so it stores value for a long period of time. That's fine. But medium of exchange is what we use currencies mostly for. And we have come a long way, right? We have started with barter systems in the early days when there was no establishment. We used precious metal like gold, silver, other things. Again, no establishment involved. Moved on to established currencies where you had those precious metals made into these denominations called coins, but still you had value in them because of the metal, not because somebody said so. And we moved on. We got into paper notes. In effect, they don't have any value unless somebody says so. And they don't have the same value everywhere. They do not necessarily need to have the same value over time. They generally don't. They fluctuate. So when we have come here, now you understand that it's based mostly on trust, on a centralized authority who has created it. And they said there is a value, hence there is a value. So it's based on trust. When you come up here, that's based on a promise. It's mostly credits. It's mostly money that you can take on a notional face value and then you have to repay at some later stage, or you exchange money through a mediary like Visa, MasterCard, and so and so. Again, centralized and based on trust or based on promises. This, of course, similar thing, but now we have moved into the domain of technology. It's based on trust, it's based on promises, but there is a technical side to it. You worry about its security not because you lose your wallet, now you worry about its security because you lost your phone. So you have moved into a different territory altogether, right? Okay, so when we start from this, the first thing we need to note in case of anything that calls itself a currency, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies in general, is what does a transaction look like? How do I transact? In a normal currency, I transact by giving the currency to somebody and then they give some goods or services in return. How does Bitcoin operate? What does a transaction look like? Let's see what a transaction looks like in a standard online banking. When you log on to OCBC iBanking or DBS iBanking, how do you do a transaction? Think of it. In every banking system, there is a bank. So there is a centralized body. Everybody is connected to that. And now when you make a transaction, when you do a transaction from one party to another, it, in a nutshell, mostly looks like this. You transfer money, you call it with some denomination, you call it by some unit. So unit in Singapore is Singapore dollar. And the value that you want to transfer is a number, roughly. That's what it is. When you want to transfer it, you never really have to communicate with the person you are doing the transfer with. If it's an online banking, you do not need to call him and say that, hey, I'm sending you $120. No, you simply log on to iBanking and then send that person $120. How it operates is, it goes to this bank, the centralized authority. The bank maintains a ledger, an accounting system. They would go into your account and figure out if you really have this $120 to spare. If you do have that, it subtracts from one account and adds to another account. That's all. Right? So it's not paper currency anymore, it's digital. So if it's digital currency, you really don't hand over something to somebody else. You really follow a centralized banking authority and a centralized ledger or an accounting system. So for the purpose of this technical area of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, so for the first part, essentially for the talk, just keep in mind, our definition of a currency is essentially an accounting system. That's all it is. It's an accounting system. It keeps track of who has what amount of money and who gives whom what amount of money. If you can control that whole thing in a systematic way, you have a robust accounting system, hence you have a robust currency, right? The value will come to that. The value will build up slowly. But for the time being, is it all right if we follow this notion? It's just an accounting system. We are going to keep track of accounts. All right. So this is great. Why do we believe in this accounting system? Why do you believe in Singapore dollar? It's government backed, of course. What else? Trust. In whom? Who are you trusting? The bank, sure. The exchanges, maybe, if you do currency exchanges, okay. Who else? So you have a trust system, right? You trust that this account is maintained properly. So this is something that I technically stole, but philosophically got inspired from the MAS website. So that's on the Monetary Authority of Singapore website. That's how they define their role in the economy of Singapore dollars. They say they maintain the integrity, security, quality, and confidence in currency. And those are essentially what you're looking for. You want integrity. What does it really mean, integrity? It means that the dollar bill that I'm carrying in my purse cannot be duplicated, cannot really be forged, cannot be counterfeit. That's a basic objective. You do not want your money to be counterfeit or forged. That's the integrity part. What about the security part? It says the promise that you're making of transferring a currency to one to another will be kept. So it's not that what you transfer is, you have some value for it, but then when you transfer it, the value just got lost. That's not how it works. The quality of it, well, the quality also comes with the fact that who does create it? Who creates this currency? So creation of a currency is something that we have to look into. We understand that mints can publish currency. It's essentially a publication, right? That's a note that somebody prints, all right? Coins somebody makes in a mint. When we come to a different kind of a currency, we should ask the same question. Who makes it? Where does it come from? And confidence, that's probably the most elusive of all. What do we even mean by confidence in a currency? You have pretty high confidence in Singapore dollars. Of course so. It's the strongest in Southeast Asia right now. So it's a pretty strong currency, and we have confidence in it because we believe in the system that maintains it. I think 10 years back, 2006, 7, around that period, Zimbabwe had to print out $1 trillion notes to sustain their economy. So their economy slammed altogether. And they had to print out notes with $1 trillion value on it. So think of it. Do you have confidence in that economy anymore? Probably not. If you think of your bank getting hit by hackers and all your money stolen, do you have confidence in them? Maybe not. So confidence in a currency arises from confidence in several points of failure. And that's where Bitcoin arises from. How many points of failure do you have? Do you have a single point of failure? Well, then all the attackers would attack that point of failure. If it fails, the confidence in the currency is gone. Do you have multiple points of failure? Maybe. Then an attacker has to attack all of those. Now let's think about this. That's a bank who takes care of all of these. That's a government who takes care of all of these. And we suddenly pull the carpet off your feet. And we ask the question, what if there wasn't any? What if there wasn't any bank? What if there wasn't any government? What if there wasn't any nation? What if there wasn't any borders? It's just a bunch of people who come together, like in this closed room that we are now. Forget about, clear your mind out of banks. There is no bank, there is no authority, there is no government, and there is no country. It's just us right here. And we have to survive, we have to create a currency of our own. That's the first idea behind cryptocurrencies. That's where it comes from. Keep the thought in your mind for a while and think of all those things that we talked about. Who do we trust? Who creates coins? Who ensures that it's not forged, it's not counterfeit? Who takes care of the confidence? See, it's all us. And most of us don't know the others. So where do you even start from? That's a basic question to ask, right? All right. This idea came up almost with the advent of internet, early 90s. This is a group of people called cypherpunks. Not sure if you have heard the name. They are the guys who started this crypto-anarchism or the crypto-anarchist movement, the cypherpunks group. 90s, as you see, most of them did something in the 90s which resulted slowly, step by step, into Bitcoin. Let's go back in history a little. and see what they thought of, and then we'll try to connect the dots. This guy, Phil Zimmerman, invented PGP, pretty good privacy, and something called the Web of Trust in '91, when internet was in its nascent stage. The idea was identity need not be controlled by anybody centralized. We could have our identities created as we want them to be. And we could create them as many times as we want to be. And we would still have nice, decentralized, without any authority, trust. Pretty bold concept. 97, Hashcash started off by saying, can I prove ownership of something without the need of anybody else giving it to me or lending it to me or really transferring the ownership? How do I do that? So they came up with something like a challenge response protocol for this. So we'll see what that results in. That was Adam Back. Then VDI came up with B-Money, extremely similar to what Bitcoin is today. It's 98. Keep in mind, that's 10 years before Bitcoin. BitGold is so similar to Bitcoin that a lot of people thought this guy, Nick Szabo, is the creator of Bitcoin. He denied. Probably he is not. But Nick Szabo was thought to be the creator of Bitcoin because BitGold as a protocol is extremely similar to how Bitcoin operates. The missing piece of the puzzle, which this 4 didn't really have so much, was solved by this guy called Hal Finney. He came up with something called a proof of work, technically a reusable proof of work. We'll see this when we talk about Bitcoin mining. You probably have heard the term called Bitcoin mining. And that's exactly where this puzzle piece fits in. That 2004 invention would go ahead and result in the 2008 Bitcoin. So around August, September, October 2008, this paper came out. Now, in academics, we do things in a different way. We write a paper, publish it, and then maybe hope for some company would be interested, convert that into a patent, a technology disclosure, license it, make a company out of it, will be popular after that, and so on and so forth. Not Satoshi. This is not even a proper paper. It was just the other way around. He really published a software. And almost as an afterthought, to explain what the software does, he came up with this paper. It's like a white paper. So if you ask me, where do I find all references to study Bitcoin in technical details? Study the code. There is nothing else. The code is something that you have to read and understand to understand what Bitcoin is. Don't worry, not today. We have about half an hour. So we are not going into the code. We'll just understand what it is from a very, very simple point of view. But do keep in mind, this guy is definitely not an academician. I believe not. That's not how academicians operate. When I say this guy, well, I should correct myself. It's a pseudonym. Nobody really knows whether it's a he, she, a group, an organization, whoever the person is. So, like Bitcoin pseudonymity, this guy is also pseudonymous. All right, so let's see what was the proposal? What changed the world? Exactly what threw us off into this whole new world of cryptocurrencies? What's the idea behind it? So the idea is this. Now we don't have a central authority, remember? It's just us. Outside the door, there is nothing. And we have to transfer money or create something of value and something of exchange between us. What do? So you want to send the same 120 Singapore dollar to another person. Where do you even start from? You can't go and log on to an iBanking system. There is no bank. So who does the accounting? Where is the ledger? That's the biggest question, right? Who even keeps track of this money? So let's assume for the time being there is a public ledger. Everyone can access it. Seems like a fantasy. No bank would allow that, right? Well, Bitcoin does. So you have got a public ledger. If you want to look into the public ledger, you can. Right now, the Bitcoin public ledger, the full size of it would be around 200 GB to 250 GB compressed. So decompressed, it would be somewhere out of 1 terabyte. If you want, you can really install a piece of software on your computer. If you have 1 terabyte of space, download the whole Bitcoin ledger, look into everyone's transactions. every transaction recorded thus far since 3rd January 2009. That was the first transaction, by the way. And remember the 2004 Hal Finney guy who devised proof of work? The first transaction was made by Satoshi to that Hal Finney. Again, thought that Hal Finney was the inventor. He denied as well. All right. So, what's so... That's very creepy, right? You can log onto a banking system, a currency, check the whole accounting ledger and look at everyone's transactions till date. How would you feel about that? If I said I could log on to your DBS ledger and I can look at everyone's account and I look at every transaction in detail, would you be very happy? Of course not, right? It doesn't even mean you are doing something illegal with your money. You do not have to. It could be absolutely legal, but still, it's privacy. We all care about privacy. I do not want my account to be scanned by a stranger. So that's the best part. All these pictures that you see here are not people. They're identities which cannot be traced back to you, hopefully. If they get traced back to you, then I know your account. If they don't get traced back to you, it's just a number, then it's like a Swiss bank transaction. An account to another account, some money went. I can see the money, how much it is, but I do not know who transacted to whom. That's not so bad. That's all right. All right. So suppose you want to transfer this. What do? You put it on the public ledger. So everybody sees, but nobody knows who these things are. Who is this and who is this is not there. It's just numbers. All right? Now, the second guy who received the money wants to spend again. That's fine. How do you spend now when you want to spend $100? Who checks if you really have $100? So you do an iBanking transaction to somebody, you say, hey, you know what, I want to send 10,000 SGD from my account to that person's account. Somebody should check if you have got 10,000 rupees, right? Who checks that? The bank checks that. Of course, the bank has to check that. Otherwise, it would be an invalid transaction. You shouldn't be able to spend more than what you have. Great. Now, it's a public accounting system, remember? Who maintains it? There is no bank. So I hope if it's a public accounting system and it's only us people out here, we are maintaining it. So I am maintaining it, you are maintaining it, everyone is maintaining it. For every such transaction, would you be willing to look at everyone's accounts and check, hey, do you have this money to spend? Only then you can spend it. Think of the amount of work. If everybody starts transacting simultaneously, all of us, not one bank, all of us have to go back into the ledger and see, hey, Sourav wants to send $100 to Kian Lam. Does he have it? Kian Lam wants to send 200 to Yona. Does he have it? Who does this? That's sheer madness. So you flip the whole system around. You flip it on its back. You say, you know what? If you say you have to give $100, this guy has to give $100 to this. If you say so, prove to me you have got $100. If you have $100, give me a proof I'll believe. But I'm not going to look into your account and check whether you have got $100. That's the crux of Bitcoin transactions. There is no accounts. Nobody checks into your account. If you want to make a transaction, you have to prove you have enough money. How does this poor guy now has to prove he has got $100? Can he prove this? What do you think? Can this guy prove he has got $100 to spend? How would you prove it? Exactly. It's a public ledger. Everyone can look into this. This guy has got $100 not because he says so. This guy has got $100 because he points to this transaction and say, hey, I got 120. If I got 120 from someone, I can very well spend 100 out of it. Make sense? So if I've got 120 from someone, I can of course spend it. So now what comes is the first technical concept of Bitcoin. You do not really give money to anyone. You do something what Sing Post does. How many of you have used the Singapore post boxes? I see a few in Jurong Point, bus station and so on. Have you seen those post boxes, the PO boxes? Right, for delivery? Somebody can deliver a package for you in one of those boxes and you can go and pick it up. Does anyone of you use this? How many? Okay. What's the procedure? You receive a code from whom? Okay. So what happens? How does a person give you that packet? Not physically, right? What does he do? Yeah? In the box. So he doesn't know you, right? Lovely. So he doesn't know you. That's kind of anonymous. He delivers the post in the parcel where? In a post box. Great. So that's your address. All right. How do you get it? Right. Lovely. How do you know nobody else does that same thing and gets your box before you do? So here you're believing in the sync post system. All right. So if we do not have the belief, it's okay. But that's the crux of the story. It is a challenge response protocol. Somebody puts it in a box, and the response to it, the key to it, is only known by you. You can go and open it and take it out. Nobody else can. Same thing out here. It's a challenge response. When this lady sends 120 to him, actually sends a challenge. Hey, if you were really this person, give me the proper response and you can unlock it. So think of the postbox mechanism exactly the same way. Where did this lady get that from? Another challenge response. Somebody must have given it to her. That's your whole transaction record. So how does one transaction work? Like this Singtel post boxes? It's this. You've got 170 from someone. That's in your Singtel post box. That's a challenge. You provide the correct response to this. That's your Singtel, not the Singtel, the Sing post code. If you have the right code, you can unlock this transaction. When you have unlocked the box, what have you got inside? You have got $170. Lovely. Do you want to give all 170 to the other person? No, you want to give only 120. Good. You take it out. You take out 120 of it, put it in the other box, the other person's box. What do you do with the remaining 50? You can again put it in your own box and lock it. Or you can lease another box by your name, but a different box, put it there and lock it. But think of it. Once you have opened that SingPost box, the first one, you cannot close it. All the money inside have to be taken out. Same here. Think of it as a safe. You unlock it, you get all the money. You have to spend it. You can spend in parts. You can give part of the money to somebody and the other part comes back to you. So if you're using a Bitcoin wallet or any cryptocurrency wallet, your wallet has this functionality in it. That's what it's doing. You spend $5 on Starbucks. It collects a few of those storage boxes that you have already with you, with maybe $1, not dollars, let's say a few Bitcoins, but in conversion, let's say a few dollars here and there. They club them together, they open all the boxes, gather all the money, spend $5 to Starbucks, take the rest of it and give it back to you. All right? Okay. So that's your transaction. That's exactly what a transaction looks like. Now let's talk about the ledger, the accounting. That's a big issue, right? We need to know who is maintaining this ledger. How is it being maintained? So remember the network? It's us, all of us. If all of us is maintaining this ledger, then all of us need to know about every transaction. You cannot hide your transaction. It's supposedly in a public ledger. So you must announce your transaction. So we'll do something like this. If I go ahead and give, say, $50 to Kian Lam, I cannot just do it in the privacy of us two. If I do it just between the two of us, nobody knows about it, it didn't happen. Right? So there's a proverb, right? If a tree falls in a forest and nobody sees it, Did the tree actually fall? Same out here. If you do a transaction and nobody sees it, did you actually transact? In case of cryptocurrencies, no. If I transact, I have to announce it to every one of you. Let's see, I have done this transaction. Starters, I have to announce to my neighbors, at least to the first row right here, who I can talk to. Then I'll ask you, please transmit this to the next row, and the next row, and the next row, and so on, so that everyone in the network knows that I have given $50 to Kianlam. Yeah? Sure. Yes? Yeah. No, you wouldn't know it's Sourav to Kianlam. You would know A to B, but you would know the $50. You would know somebody, that's me, A. Yes? Oh, you can see the transaction. So you can set up your machine to see every transaction that's happening on Bitcoin. Absolutely, yes. Exactly. So you don't see it per se, but you can really see through the whole ledger and see everybody's transaction. It's the only thing is, think of a bank. Your identities are transparent to the bank. Every identity is known. But all the transactions are opaque. That's not known to anybody. This is the reverse side of the story. Every transaction amount is known to the public. The identities are not transparent. They are hidden. They are numbers. That's where the cryptography comes in. But we are trying to avoid the crypto part as much as possible. Yeah. Good question. Good question. Thank you. So who maintains? That's where we are going right now. As you understand, you are all using a wallet, maybe, and you say that, hey, I never see other transactions. I only see mine. So I never maintain. Good, let's go there. This is a transaction, remember? If I let every one of you know in the front row, would all of you be willing to note it down on a piece of paper? I can request you, please note it down on a piece of paper that A transferred $50 to B. Let's note it down. There is a global ledger, right? You note it down on your pieces of paper. So you note down on your local piece on the desk that you have one. But there is a global piece. That's the ledger. That's the accounting system. That's it. That's a public accounting system. Right? That's what we, overall, everyone can see that. This is called something that you have heard of quite often recently. It's a blockchain. That's what a blockchain looks like. It's just a chain of blocks. One security aspect of it, it's quite nice in terms of integrity. You cannot really tamper it very easily. It's called tamper resilient. It comes from the fact that, think of this, if these are pages of a book, you take this page, you take a photo of it, make it really, really small, and paste it on the next page. For this page, you take a photo of it, make it really, really small, paste it on the next page. And you go on doing that for the whole book. See, now you cannot really tear out any page, because everybody would know that, hey, the page is missing, but the photo is there on the next one. You cannot really change a page either. Everyone would know you have changed it. You can change, but everyone will know. So you can change, but everyone will know that you have changed it. We'll come there. We'll come there. Not everyone is an expert to know whether it has been changed or not. We'll come there. All right. So think of this blockchain as your ledger. You have written these pages out here, and you have to publish it. You want to write the next page in this accounting book. Well, of course, if every one of us maintaining this currency, we would all like to write. That's a mess. There are about 300 of us here. We cannot all write to this ledger. Do you want any special one of us to write there? I'm the speaker. Do you let me write? Maybe not. Kianlam is the organizer. Do you want him to write? Maybe, but do you trust him that much? We don't know. You only trust you, nobody else. So who would you like to write on there? The most democratic system is, let's have a random choice, a lottery of some sorts. Whoever wins the lottery gets to write the next page. So it's an accounting book. You let the person write the next page, whoever wins the lottery. You cannot host a physical lottery. It's a computing system. You must have a computational lottery. So you have to solve some sort of a puzzle. So everyone sits with their laptops and solves the puzzle. Whoever solves the puzzle correctly posts the answer and gets the right to go there and write on this ledger. When I say go there, there's nowhere to go. It's public, means everyone knows that ledger. All that guy does, this guy who wins this puzzle, he publishes his page to everyone. So he makes photocopies and gives it to everyone. And say, you know what? There's a solution to the puzzle. I solved it first. So I get to write. This is what I wrote for the last 10 minutes. You must agree to this. Make sense? Seems weird? A little, sure. But what else do you do? Suppose you agree to that. If you agree to that, and the next time, would the same person win? No, it's a puzzle. Everyone is solving the puzzle. Maybe you win the next time. If you win, if you really like the previous guy's work and say, hey, this guy has done some good accounting, lovely, then you continue that chain. Right? So you send the next page. You say, the previous guy did a good job, I'll append to it. Let me write the next page of the accounting book. If you don't believe in that guy, and say, hey, I did a transaction, it doesn't show up in this page. This guy has done a really, really bad job in accounting. So you don't believe in him? Good. Compete with him. You can always send a page saying, hey, I don't believe in that person. Replace his page with mine. Who wins? To know who wins, think of the third person who wins the vote next time. The next time, there is no guarantee these guys will win. Maybe this guy wins. He comes in and he looks at this thing. There is an accounting book and this page has been duplicated. There are 2 pages with different transactions. Which one is correct? The one that he thinks correct, he would vote for that. The next guy comes in, he votes for another, and it goes on. How long does it go on? Till you have something of a long chain. All of us are trying to put in our efforts to solve the puzzle and writing the next page of the accounting ledger. If we are honest, then we are doing a good job. Everyone will just continue the chain. If anybody is dishonest, the honest guy will catch it and would duplicate it. And then everybody would follow this chain. Think of it. It's a voting mechanism. Like a democracy. Yes? Coming there. Give me a moment. Coming there. So this is exactly a voting mechanism, right? Everybody goes on voting. What do we trust in? That's how Bitcoin works, by the way. Who do you trust here? Do you trust a bank who says, hey, this page is absolutely correct because I say so? No, you don't trust that. Do you trust in this page because this guy who got this says, hey, I wrote it, I say so, hence it's correct? No, you don't trust him. Who do you trust? Yes? I trust me, and then when I look at this public ledger, who do I trust? That's a mechanism Bitcoin comes with built in. They say, trust the longest chain. What does it mean? It means trust the account book which most of the people in the network has voted for. Exactly like a democracy. Which party do you put in power? The one that most of us has voted for. Which account book do you approve of? The one that most of us voted for. So who do you trust? You really trust in a principle that majority of us are honest. If you start by doing the opposite, majority of us are dishonest, maybe you don't have anything. It's better to believe in a bank. You start with the foundational principle is majority of this network is honest, hence this account is honest. If there are rogue people writing wrong things, they are the minority. So if I take a vote, they will lose eventually. That's what the ledger looks like. That's blockchain. How does it look like? It's a distributed ledger. Everybody has got a copy. You can too. There is blocks written one after another, the pages, the blocks in the accounting system. There are people who tried to do something else, but they were voted out. Again, somebody tried to do something else, voted out. Which chain sustains? The one that's the longest, means the one that most of the people who won the lottery voted for. Right? It's publicly verifiable. You can do it too. Everyone can go in and verify each and every transaction in this whole 1 terabyte of ledger. It's tamper resilient because if somebody tampers any of the, see, maybe this was a tamper. If they tampered with it, it's not because of this chain that they're voted out. They are voted out because majority of the network is honest. They would always vote out a dishonest person. Right? Think of an open governance in which you always vote out an administrator who is dishonest because majority of the other administrators are honest. Exactly like this. Well, now this would feel completely alien to you because you never see this when you interact with Bitcoin, right? You have a wallet, you do Bitcoin transactions, where the hell is this? You've never seen it, right? That's where it comes as any distributed system would. There are 3 layers of users in general. There's a layer of user who are the laymen, who are us. We see Bitcoin and we say, hey, it's a money, let's transact, or let's store, or let's invest, or let's trade. The second layer, who are a little more enthusiastic in the technology, would say, hey, it's publicly verifiable, let's go and verify everything. Is it correct? Keep in mind, a user can become a verifier too. You can. We just don't invest that much of time and effort. The third layer is, the guys who are really writing these pages, they are called the miners in Bitcoin. That's what Bitcoin mining is all about. When you mine Bitcoin, you essentially help run an honest system with utmost honesty. Hopefully. We'll see honesty has a price, so we'll come to that. Yes? No. So it's an accumulation of multiple transactions. Right now, from a technical side of it, every 10 minutes or so, you get one page in the ledger, which is one block. So all the transactions that you have heard over this period of 10 minutes would go into that, more or less. It's a naive way of saying so. So it's not one transaction, it's a bunch of transactions. Right? Just like an accounting book, you don't put one transaction per page, you put a bunch. That's it. Who are these guys? If you have never done Bitcoin mining, why haven't you? And who are these guys who are really doing this mining and maintaining this system? What do they have? Why would anybody take up such a job? It's like solving a puzzle every time. By the way, the puzzles are computational puzzles, and that's a lot hard to solve than you think. The people who are doing it must have some incentive. And the incentive design of Bitcoin is ingenious. That's exactly what keeps the system alive and honest. So Bitcoin has 3 pieces. There is a blockchain that's a ledger. There is this mining activity going on so that everybody votes and keeps this thing in sync and honest. But to be honest, you are not just given some moral benefits. Hey, you are honest, very good. No. You get some reward, and that's the incentive. Remember these guys? This one who wrote this page? When you write this page, how many transactions do you write was your question, right? You write all the transactions that you have heard over time, a certain period of time. Plus, you write one transaction just for you. So you write a transaction giving money to you. Who gives the money? No one. It's generated from thin air. That is mining. So there is one transaction. Remember I said during talking about transactions that every transaction must have a proof. It came from somebody else. Not here. That one transaction is an exception. Every block has got one transaction where money is generated from thin air. Given to whom? Given to the person who writes it. How much? 12.5 Bitcoin as of today. Every 4 years, it halves. So if you think of the Bitcoin economy, where does money come in? That's the source where money comes in. Rest of it is from one point to another point. So from your Sing Post box, that's your DHL, who gives the box first time, and then you take it out and change boxes. This is what mining is. 12.5 Bitcoin, calculate, it's around $8,000 today per Bitcoin. So not bad, right? So that's where it comes from. All right. Not just this. This guy gets all the transaction fees from all the transactions he has written in the page as well. So they're dual benefit. Not just this, that's the thin air money, and also all the transaction fees for the other transactions. Good. That's an incentive. If you have an incentive, and the incentive is what? You solve a puzzle, you get to write, you get money. Lovely. So everybody sits with their laptops and start doing this. This was 2009. You could sit with a laptop and do this mining. Quite soon, as you start getting money and the money becomes more and more prominent, Bitcoin gains momentum, increase in value, what would you do? You would invest the money that you're earning back into solving that puzzle. It's a computational puzzle. You need bigger computers to solve it. Buy bigger computers. Put in servers, put in racks, put in clusters, put in supercomputers if you wish. And try to solve the puzzle faster than anybody else. If you go on doing it, you are writing the page most often, because now you outperform all the others with desktops and laptops. That's where the distributed nature of Bitcoin, poof, goes away in the air. Used to be distributed, not anymore. It's extremely concentrated upon the basic pool of miners who have the most computational power. Right? So who do we trust in? In the bank? No more. In the government? No more. But in the miners? Oh yes. A set of miners who you are transacting, who you're talking to when you transact. Your transactions won't go through unless the miners put them into the ledger. Right? Now think of it. Does anyone have any incentive to do a wrong transaction and make it into the block? No, because if there are other miners, they would vote him out. If you're dishonest, you don't just lose reputation, you actually lose the 12.5 that you gained. So if you put in a lot of effort and time and money into solving that puzzle, why would you be dishonest? Unless you're the majority. If you're the majority, you can do whatever you want. If you're not the majority, there is no incentive for you to be dishonest. That's the backbone of why you have a trust in the Bitcoin protocol overall. Right? All right. So, in a nutshell, what's Bitcoin? There is a ledger. There is a consensus, which is to keep everyone in sync. The puzzle is called the proof of work puzzle. Not going into the technical details, just think of it as a really, really, really hard puzzle, which right now you cannot solve unless you have a gigantic cluster of computation akin to somewhat like a Google's computation cluster, let's say. You can solve that. It's really, really hard right now. And there are specialized equipment for doing that as well. Some people are doing it. You have a challenge response, that Sing Post PO box concept. That is done through cryptography. So that's where cryptography comes in. There is no encryption in Bitcoin. You don't encrypt anything. Cryptography comes in that challenge response. It's the digital signature mechanism. If somebody is delivered to you, it's only you who can recover it because you can sign it. Right? And there is identity. And the identity, again, from the digital signature mechanism, is somewhat like your public key or the public face that you put up. If you use Bitcoin wallets, you might have seen identities like this. That's like your public key in cryptography. Or that encoded as a QR code of some sort. The wallet actually maintains a bunch of public keys. So more or less, believe me for the time being when I say every time you transact with somebody in Bitcoin right now, you're using a different public key all the time. Unless it's a business like Starbucks, they wouldn't change that face so often. But if it's you, you are definitely changing the face every time you transact. That's what makes Bitcoin a little untraceable. You don't know who you're dealing with all the time. But these are the 4 aspects of Bitcoin, for that matter, any cryptocurrency. So all the cryptocurrencies, if I take them one by one and rip them apart philosophically, those are the 4 components. Bitcoin, the blockchain as the accounting system, proof of work is the consensus mechanism whereby it keeps honest because all the players play in this, that's a puzzle solving mechanism. Signatures is a challenge response protocol, and the identities are something called pseudonymous. You do not really identify who is who. Last year in August, Bitcoin broke off into another piece called Bitcoin Cash. All they changed was the blockchain. The blockchain now had larger blocks so that you can write more transactions per block. And that structure of the blockchain is the only change they did. They are still using the proof of work, the digital signatures, and the pseudonymous identity. Another cryptocurrency, right? Somebody thought, hey, you know what, this proof of work, that's consuming too much power and time and effort. That's a heavy load. So there are these mining rigs that you hear about in northern China and Siberia and Iceland who are doing all the mining, and you were just sitting with your phone and thinking, how do I mine on this? And somebody tells you, you can't mine on this. Not even on your laptop or a desktop. Got a supercomputer? Maybe. So somebody said, hey, what's going on? You cannot have that tough a proof of work for the challenge solving. Good. Came in Litecoin. They changed the proof of work. They said, well, you do not have to buy specialized equipment to do mining. Everyone should be able to mine in some sense. What you need is more memory and not more hardware power. More memory as in more RAM, more memory in terms of computational memory. Is it democratic? Of course not. Now you would put all your money that you gain into the memory. But they changed it. It's faster than that. It's faster than Bitcoin. It's a little easier. You can use a CPU to mine. You do not have to go into GPU and specialized hardware. What came next? Somebody said, hey, you know what? It's still the signature mechanism. It's still pseudonymous, but you can still track those people who are using this coin. Not entirely, but to some extent. What if you couldn't track them? What if you go for more privacy and anonymity? Welcome, Monero. Monero said, hey, keep these fine. These are all right. Have a blockchain, have a proof of work. But come in, not with the standard cryptographic signature, but something a little sophisticated called a ring signature. It hides you in plain sight. So you do not have a linkability with your identity anymore. So it does a better job than Bitcoin does. It goes from pseudonymity into a little more of anonymity and linkability. But not proper anonymity yet. Remember those 90s cypherpunks group? All they wanted was no authority, no surveillance. So comes Zcash. Complete anonymity. Complete privacy, no authority, no surveillance whatsoever. Completely anonymous. They use something even more sophisticated called zero-knowledge proofs. That was one line that came up after Bitcoin. But there was another line. These were all these anarchists who said more privacy, more freedom, and so on. So there was another line who said, hey, more business. So convert that zero knowledge, don't have it just for anonymity, make it useful. Welcome Ethereum, which has a similar kind of a framework, blockchain, proof of work, going to be proof of stake shortly. But this signature changed into a challenge response which is useful, smart contracts. That's the first notion of blockchain as we hear of so many times nowadays. Can you put this to use? Yes, of course. You can write lots of apps on it. Can you put it to a financial use? Yes, of course. Comes Ripple. You can do payments on this. It's a payment network. Similar idea, a blockchain, but not a proof of work anymore. You have a Ripple protocol. Payments can be done and all registered identities. See, starting from a completely decentralized framework, you are slowly moving in the business side into more registered identities and more into a business side of the story, where you don't mind so much of an authority. Great, the business side of things comes in blockchain, the distributed ledger systems. With Hyperledger, Ethereum, Corda, Hashgraph, you name it, JP Morgan, Quorum. All of them tied through the same thread, the 4 components that we talked about. There is a ledger. There is a consensus that drives the whole thing into unity. there is some sort of a challenge response by which you prove ownership of something, and there is some sort of a notion of privacy. Put them together, you got your own coin. All the coins, now you can go back, and if you have time and patience, you can rip apart any coin and see, okay, that's what they're doing. I understand that, right? All right, more resources out here. Yeah, question? Oh, okay. Way too technical. Should I go into it here, or maybe can we talk later? Okay, so in a nutshell, smart contracts do a similar kind of a thing as, are you a student here, or, sorry? What do you do? Okay, all right, great. So anyway, think of applying for a job, right? You would go and apply for a job, and you take all your certificates. You photocopy the certificates and take it to somebody. Do they believe that's the original one's photocopy? Not often. They would ask you to attest it from somebody. So there's a rule in play, right? You get this attested by somebody, you get so-and-so GPA, you get so-and-so recommendations, then you come with all of them to me. I look at all of it, and I pass it. I approve it. That sync post box, if the post box asked you for all of these things, that would be like a smart contract. They would say, yes, you can open the box and use this, but you have to do all of these things. It's a verification which results in a true-false kind of a scenario, but it goes on in a very complicated format, not a simple signature verification. It's a more complicated format of that. That's more or less what I can say as of now. But yeah, sure, we can talk about that later. Yeah, so if you want to have fun, then watch this Banking on Bitcoin, a nice documentary from 2016, just to know the background of Bitcoin and how things came about. If you don't want to have fun, read the book. Bitcoin and Cryptocurrency Technologies by Princeton. It's a Princeton group who wrote the book. It's really nice. It's a detailed book. If you want to have a discussion, send me an email. All right? Great. Yeah, I'll stop here, and then.
Hello. So, do you have a lot of questions? Not yet. Dr. Can you take a seat?
Sure.
Give you a round of applause for his very nice presentation. And I want to invite two of our panelists to go up to the stage. First of all, I'd like to invite Mr. Somnendu Mohanty, right over here. He is the Chief FinTech Officer of Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, and a bit of introduction. He's responsible for creating development strategies, public infrastructure, and regulatory policies around technology innovation. He has spent more than 20 years in various leadership roles globally in technology, finance, and innovation. He has co-authored several patented works in the area of retail distribution of the financial sector. Mr. Mohanty is also extensively engages with ecosystems of various jurisdictions on innovation, policy making, and tech-enabled financial services. He is on the institutional investors list of influential fintech global deal makers. Mr. Mohanty has been recognized internationally as a fintech thought leader, and he was recently named the Market Reformer of the Year by IFL Euro Money. So there's who we have, Mr. Mohanty. Now, next up, I would like to introduce Mr. Peter Sin, right over there. Peter is an experienced financial professional with one of the Singapore's leading financial advisory firm. He serves as the co-head of Digital Currency Subcommittee of Singapore Cryptocurrency and Blockchain Industry Association, as an association which promotes the use of blockchain technologies and digital currencies in Singapore. He's also the co-founder of Singapore Bitcoin Club. So if you have any question about how to trade Bitcoin, here's the man. Singapore's largest cryptocurrency educational community that was established to promote financial literacy in crypto assets and practical technical analysis education for consumers. So I'd like to pass the mic to Sourav. He will be the moderator as well. And they'll talk about it. And then we open the floor for you to ask questions. All right? Come, Sourav, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. So I understand there are a few questions about the technical side as well. But let's do this. Let's have a panel discussion with our delegates and open up the questions and answers in Bitcoin in a different territory as well, more in the financial domain. So we have two experts on fintech in general and Bitcoin and blockchain technology. So my informal understanding is we would come to know, my educational experience as well, how to trade in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies from Mr. Sin, and maybe how not to trade in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies from Mr. Mohan. So that's the overall idea.
We will have a very unintelligent response how to not trade.
Understood. Okay. All right. Okay. So let me start with Mr. Mohan.
I think I was just to generally start this.
Sure.
I must say, and I'm not saying Mr. Sourav is here. I have watched so many sessions on Bitcoin. Perhaps today is my best day to hear somebody so clearly speaking about the concept. I think you should all give a big hand to him. And as you're speaking, I sent a note to our managing director, Ravi Menon, that we should get Sourav to MAS to teach us about Bitcoin. So I think we're publicly going to request you to come to MAS. And, okay? And we will get ourselves educated, and hopefully we'll be a little more supportive about things what we do. Okay.
But I don't think there is any lack of support in things what you're doing right now. So anyway, I mean, should we start with the basic?
Yes.
So what I did talk about is how things work, right? But we didn't really talk about, do you think from an MAS point of view or from Singapore point of view, is Bitcoin a currency?
I think for us, with a simple understanding as a central banker, we need some kind of obligation. Somebody has to oblige to what we hold. And I think one of the things we don't see as a central banker, that where does this, who ultimately is going to back this currency?
So you mean who is responsible for maintaining this, or?
And somebody has to back this currency, right? If I walk into somewhere, somebody has to say, yes, I back this currency. Meanwhile, the question to you, in your complex diagram, who backs the currency? That's my as a regulator, as a central banker, we always question that. Who is ultimately backing this a legal tender?
Nobody actually backs it as a legal tender as of now.
So the currency definition is the legal tender. It is a unit of account. And because it doesn't fit into two things, we don't treat it as a currency.
Okay. Makes my talk crypto dash. But yeah. So coming to you, Peter. So if it's not a currency, then when you talk about trading, is it more like an asset? What's trading? How do you even define and go for trading?
Okay. I think what I'm speaking here is quite sensitive because I'm wearing the head of the association. All right. So maybe let's speak on behalf of the association first. So for us, what we do is more for corporates, for blockchain companies. We encourage them, okay, to join Access. That's where we have dialogue sessions with MEAS, with different stakeholders, or even with IRAs. In fact, 2 days back, we have Access Taxation Planner. Okay, we invited representatives from EY, Ernst & Young, to talk about, how do companies actually handle issues on taxing, or say taxes, okay, or to declare to IRS, okay, IRAS, okay, on their revenue in form of crypto. I think there's a dialogue on all that. So this is what we do from the association. And from the association perspective, of course, we discourage speculation. Okay, this is where I would say we need to define trading. So from the association point of view, of course, unless you are clearly understand about the instrument, you know about the fundamentals, you know about the technology behind, and you also have some knowledge in, I would say, technical charting to identify, okay, points of entry, points of risk management, you shouldn't be dabbling in cryptocurrencies. Okay, and it is for someone that knows about blockchain technologies, is someone who knows about, I would say, technical trading. If you are looking at it from a financial asset point of view, I think this is where you need to go in, but please do your due diligence. Okay? On the lighter side, from the personal point of view, of course, myself, I'm from the mainstream financial services. So where we see crypto is as another interesting asset class. And from a trading perspective, it's more like you leveraging it as from an instrument. As an instrument, of course, then you take profit. So it's not so much on the fundamental blockchain, right? As a medium of, I would say, opportunity. That's from a trading point of view. Of course, from an investing point of view, is investing in the future of blockchain technologies. This is where, of course, for me personally, I don't see cryptocurrencies as cryptocurrencies, because I think the word currency is quite misleading. There's a lot of crypto. For us, we see it as crypto assets. And cryptocurrencies is one, I would say, more interesting flavor, like Bitcoin, okay, because we see it as a medium of exchange. But people like myself, people in the financial spectrum, see it more like a store of value. Especially with, as you know, you saw the news, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, okay, the other big fund houses are going into, I would say, this market, even having like Bitcoin futures, Bitcoin ETFs, and apparently it seems to be legitimizing, okay, it as an asset class. Okay.
Okay, as soon as you say that, I should just hand over the mic.
Yeah, so I think let me respond to his point and let me try to simplify this whole discussion, not as elegant as Sourav did. To us, there are, I hope collectively, there are three buckets. One bucket which Sourav just explained, that is this token can be replaced as a medium of exchange, can we use that to buy things? And Sourav, if you agree, today we can't even buy a coffee in less than, how many hours it takes to buy a coffee using Bitcoin? By the time your proof of work and puzzles thing gets solved.
So the thing is, you understood that it takes about 10 minutes to put up one page of that account. So if you are a cautious merchant, you wouldn't really sell your commodity unless you have a few pages after your transaction. So a standard is about 6 pages of confirmation. That is 6 confirmations to make a long chain. 6 confirmations would roughly take an hour. And you can't wait for a coffee for an hour. So a coffee house, if they want to legitimize a Bitcoin trade, they would have to take the risk on themselves and say, hey, you give me a transaction, I'll on a face value approve this coffee. You drink it and go away. If the transaction fails, it fails, I'll take the blame.
So it means I cannot buy a coffee also with a Bitcoin. But by the time I have actually got my Bitcoin, the value has gone up, and I'll not give that money.
Or down, and they will charge you more for the coffee.
Charge me more. So there is a store of value doesn't really work for Bitcoin. It doesn't really, you can't really predict how much money it is at every point of time. So that doesn't work. And as an innovator, as a supporter of innovation, I think we got to do more experiment to get there. The second bucket is what you call as tokenizing an underlying value, or which represents a utility. For example, I can tokenize a certain services and distribute to all of you, and tomorrow you can come and take that service as a exchange, which means you buy the token, which allows you to buy computing resources. You buy this token as a reward points, you can fly, when you can exchange with the airline's ticket. So there is something called utility token, which represents a certain idea, certain services, certain product, and some form of agreement that we can exchange this product in future if you like it. Nothing to regulate there. It is as any other tokenization like reward points. The third bucket is ownership of an asset. Will this token represent an ownership of asset? Because I was responding to his point, and it's a tradable asset and asset class. If the token represents an asset and it is represent ownership of an asset, we have an existing regulation called Securities and Futures Act, and it must comply to the regulation. And if it doesn't comply, you know what happened yesterday.
And today's headlines.
And today's headline. So we will come after you, and you know what MAS does when it comes after you. So you don't want to get there. But if there are business proposals or there are business products where an not asset token, but a token in the third bucket, in a way it represents very closely to the second bucket, and there are some opportunity to improve our capital market using the token, maybe as an experiment we are willing to do, but there's something called MAS Sandbox. Come there and show us that can you really improve the capital market using this new way of tokenizing value. And hopefully, in that experiment, we can think something else to come, which we don't know. As any other experiment, opportunity, it has come to some amount of empirical evidence. We have to see how it works. So these are the three buckets, which in my mind, when it comes to any conference like this or a lecture like this, I look for which bucket this guy is talking about. And what Sourav talked about in the first 1 hour is about the first bucket. I'm very happy he did the way he did it.
So, okay, so I work in cryptology, but that was half cryptic to me all through. I didn't understand a lot of things. So honestly, just from a layman perspective, let's say, I want to, say, invest in Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies or something of that sort. Where does the regulatory framework come into it from an MAS point of view, from any government point of view? It's a legitimate transaction? Do I pay taxes on it? What's the regulatory framework around it?
If you know how to pay tax on Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin becomes a legal product. I think the challenge is that there are a whole set of complex issues in the whole thing. Ownership. What is the source? The KYC. Who actually sold you? There are issues around money laundering. The whole anonymity creates layers of complex ownership downline. And then on top, the whole cyber hack is causing a lot of anxiety. So this whole space to us has three layers of issue. One is there's a customer protection issue, because a lot of customers can get, or citizens can buy this product, and which can lead to a speculation and mis-selling. There's an issue around money laundering. And third, which is thankfully not it, will it affect the financial stability, which is not there. I must say it's way, that to go there, we need a significant amount of size of the currency trading. But there are discussions around exchanges. I think that's where I think you're heading to, because if there are a lot of utility token, the second bucket, and those tokens represent some sort of value exchange, is there a possibility to put them on an exchange and we regulate that exchange and ensure there are KYC's rules being applied, there are money laundering checks being, know your customer checks are being applied, money laundering checks are being applied, the whole buyer, seller, custody are being properly prepared. There is a hope to regulate those kind of infrastructure. And I think what Japan is doing, that what Japan has, in a way, agreed to allow exchanges to be built in Japan, but then it ran into a problem. A massive problem, because there's a massive cyber hack happened on Coinbase, and which led to the regulators intervene and told exchanges to stop. Has it stopped, or?
A few have moved to Malta.
Moved to Malta. They keep on moving, and ask the exchanges to put more stronger governance structure. This is where the regulation is heading as we speak.
Great. So that clarifies a lot of issues. But then, Peter, where do you see a standard investor, or say a layman who wants to invest and explore this asset class, as you call it, an asset class? And how do I know? So suppose I do not even care about the technology at all. So when I invest in a stock exchange, I sometimes do it based on speculation. I sometimes do it based on the market analysis. I sometimes do it based on the fundamental analysis of the company and things like that. So where does one stand in this kind of an investment or this kind of a trade? What do you think? I mean, how would one approach this? For my education, for sure.
Okay, so
and where do they get the cash equivalent?
Okay, in the first place, from an access standpoint, that's where I mean, as an association, okay, because one of our key pillars of advocacy and education, and this is where our subcommittee role is on consumer education. We can't stop people from trading, or we can't stop people from investing. And so the most important thing is on advocating education, dialogue sessions like this. And for access, we work with different stakeholders like experts, okay, CoinHako, the most often. Who are CoinHako customers here? CoinHako users, experts, okay. I think this is the most prominent source, or the most prominent exchange that for Singapore, from the Singapore bank account, okay, to CoinHako via experts as an intermediary, okay, you buy your crypto. Okay, so these I would say reputable sources in
But
with
do
some
you
forms.
think still is working?
Yes.
You can still move?
Yeah, it's still yeah, okay. Yeah. So currently it's still moving. I mean, like people can still purchase it. Of course, there's some limits. People who are earlier movers, myself and a few other of my, I would say, partners, back in 2 years ago. So we don't really face the limits. But people, I would say, who entered the scene in after the first half of last year, this is where the limits step in, because you don't have actually transaction records. So experts actually limit your per day volume, buy, sell volume, and all that. Okay, so for us, we always encourage dialogue sessions, education, dialogue sessions, and to remind consumers of the risks. Okay, then for me, I would say there's two main classes of, from the investors first, two main classes. Number one is for people who already understand about, I would say, the conventional instruments, and they're looking for ways, I would say, to make a better return because of the uncertainty in the stock market, etc. And so, but they're from a very risk management point of view, portfolio management of view, and so they won't risk like 100% of their portfolio, probably 10, 5%, okay, as part of the portfolio. But what's scary is there's another class of investors which never invest anything before, and probably they are what we call the risk, I would say, vulnerable, okay, consumers. They are above 65, okay. And the very first thing is they go to a seminar that preach about ICOs, and they say you can earn probably 10 times, 100 times return, and this is scary, right? So this is what I would say from the association point of view, we also try to warn consumers, okay? And what I see personally is a lot of education needed, and it's more for sophisticated investors to go in, yeah.
That makes sense, but okay, my job is really easy.
Sure.
You have an answer.
No, my concern, that if you're looking for the next foolish person to buy the product, and that's how speculation picks up, I think this is where my concern is. Because this product has no underlying asset. The product doesn't translate to real social value. Unlike it is a token which helps to create applications and all this thing. This is where I think all of the participants here have to start thinking seriously about what exactly we are doing. Unless you believe that you're going to take advantage of a speculative market, and in the process lose your shirts and pants. And that's the reason I will strongly recommend to all of you not to indulge in things which you don't understand. I think that's the only simplest message I can give.
Okay, well, that's, I don't know, that's a little ominous, I guess. But yeah, that comes from the regulatory framework. So that's the official message in general. Okay, so either of you, I mean, whoever wants to answer. So when you say you have to understand this, which part of you do you need to understand? So when you invest in a stock market, do you need to understand about the company, about the asset valuation, how it's doing, and so on? Because in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency, it seems like the prices could be really volatile and changes based on a government regulation coming in. Like today's headline could have caused something. Japan closing their exchanges or putting in more regulation. One exchange like Mt. Gox getting hit by hackers. So anything like that could really change the market abruptly.
Sure.
So what are the risks? What is the nascent
I think
idea?
I think, my sense is that the whole speculation started, let's say, 6-7 months back. Is that right way to? And it went to an unsustainable 20K. What is it? 20K. It so happened that I have a historical reference to that in the height of price. I was talking to a reporter on a Friday. I didn't know he was going to publish it on Saturday. And it headline says MAS has this view on crypto. The price started tanking to start hitting a massive, and it was published in UK. In fact, the Daily Telegraph took it as a headline out there, and from that point, the prices has gone down. Now, no, I didn't cause. It is a spurious correlation. Okay, there's no real correlation between the two. My interview and the price going down. The reason I said that, I remember when it went down the day my interview came in the Daily Telegraph in UK. So, I think the question you asked is very pertinent. I think for us not from my regulatory side, from a development side, I'm looking at two aspects, which everybody talks about, the blockchain piece and the tokenizing piece. And that's the reason why Singapore government, MAS in particular, has started a project called Project Ubin. And Project Ubin, how many of you have heard about Project Ubin? Yes, there are a few here. So Project Ubin is a program which MAS started a year back. The program was designed for us to experiment with the industry. 11 or 10 banks participated in that experiment. 3 of the ledger company, R3 Coda and Hyperledger and Quorum, they came together, and we picked 5 use cases. 1, tokenizing Singapore dollar and trying to experiment in a wholesale payment infrastructure. Can we move around and see what efficiency it brings to the operating system of a wholesale payment? And the third one was to try cross-border between 2 jurisdictions. Can we bring some efficiency because you have tokenized your dollar, and it helps to reduce the current inefficiency in the transfer system? And the 4th and 5th are related to the security exchange, DVP, delivery versus payment with the securities you buy. We are on the 3rd stage of the project. We completed the first one and second piece, and we have published a very extensive report you can download from our MAS website. It talks about how our current payment system looks like, how it will look like in a wholesale payment if you use tokenized Singapore dollar and put all the distributed node. What are the observations we had in that experiment? I don't want to go in detail, but we also learned something interesting because, and I tell you an example, in a payment system, the efficiency comes from netting, or else the cost of collateral will just go up because every time I move money, and you have to ensure that there is a predictability, you will take collateral from me. But we have something called netting system. But how do you do netting when the token is not anonymized? So you can't. But thankfully, because we did this experiment, the three partners came together and able to use one of your third proof of work method to able to identify, net it without keeping the privacy intact. That was an interesting result which came out of that experiment, that we took a blockchain and tokenized version and applied to our existing system, took some virtues of the existing centralized system, took some advantage of the distributed system, and we saw some efficiency, but they're not remarkably efficient from what we have today. So nothing exciting, but we learned a lot of things about this blockchain world. What we believe will be the killer app is the cross-border. Because when it comes to cross-border, it is not about how to move money from a country to B country. There are a series of things happens when you send money. Your KYC checks, your purpose of transaction checks, the beneficiary check, the person who sent money there will check hundreds of things. Can we use blockchain and at some form of trust in both the end to reduce this operational checks and make the cross-border faster and cheaper? And that's the program we have started with Bank of Canada. As a partner, we're looking at another central bank. And if that works, I think we, at least from central bank perspective, we have discovered a real value in this, thanks to Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and blockchain. We've finally found an application to really make a meaningful change in our existing system. That's on the money and how to move money and make money out of money. We also are experimenting the same blockchain cryptographic technology for know your customer, especially for the corporate customers. Because when we onboard corporate customer to a bank account, There's very complex checks happens on the ownership of the corporate who are located in multiple jurisdiction, and all this complex corporate ownership can be verified using a blockchain technology. And we have started that with private sector together to do eKYC for corporates on blockchain. And the third piece is trade finance, because one of the advantages of such thinking of ABC, ABCD, which Sourav explained, is can you use that for the global trade financing? Because you know global trade financing is a very complex process. Exporters, importers, shipping company, logistic, transportation, and at any point of time things can go wrong. And the whole supply chain get financed by the banks. Can we use distributed node of distributed node, and those data getting created can be trusted, and then banks in Singapore can finance without the complex process of getting all data, verifying it, and this whole process becomes very expensive, and that creates a better credit facility for the global trade finance chain. And to support that, MAS and Singapore have started an experiment called GTCN, Global Trade Connectivity Network. And this is going to be the first, probably the first production grade infrastructure and blockchain which uses that technology to do a global trade financing. So that's where we are in terms of our dabbling with your complex technology.
No, that's amazing. I mean, that's a lot of things. Coming from the same point, Peter, you are from the Blockchain Industry Association as well. So I heard about blockchain being used a lot in a governance structure. So where do you see the future of blockchain and this overall, the framework, not really the currency, in an industry? And then how do we get engaged in it? I mean, what is there to learn about this and what's going on?
So in fact, I would say most people know about blockchain is probably associated with fintech or financial technology, but there's more to that. Because there are many companies in this space. Of course, one of the most obvious one is in the logistics sector, where you actually move goods from multiple points, and so blockchain technology serves as a very good, I would say, system moving forward, okay, to identify. Just imagine if your product ship out from country A, okay, along the way, there's spoilage, okay, imagine it's perishable goods. Okay, how do you track, or who is responsible for it? So actually, blockchain technology will serve as an effective means, okay, innovative means, okay, for companies in the logistics industry. Okay, another one will be in the medical sector, something interesting. Of course, there are many other sectors. Then something that we also increasingly see is that mainstream companies who already have very good revenue streams, they are going into ICO, initial coin offering. And what's not so good, okay, is that we are seeing these companies just from the fundraising perspective. They raise an ICO, but there's no real utility to it. Okay, this is pretty scary. And what we try to, I would say, discourage companies ever thinking of that, because you don't have a true intent of decentralization. Okay, you are still using the same system, you have a centralized system, but you are just doing an ICO for the sake of ICO to raise money, right? So from the association perspective, we discourage companies to do like that. Okay, but unless you have a real intent, okay, to move forward, okay, from as a blockchain industry, okay, and we welcome you, okay, if you need any assistance, okay, to join us as a member. That's where we organize dialogue sessions, that the more experienced companies, we can share different ideas, contacts, and also on the technology frontier.
Great, thanks a lot. So any final words, what do you leave our audience with? And then of course they will charge you with the questions, we'll come there.
I think, again, keeping not the policy side, pure experiment side, my sense is that the first bucket of the whole Bitcoin, once it reaches certain technology maturity, we will see some real economic value of applying that in some use cases. But till that time, I think we will look at and watch it very carefully. But I think coming back a brief on the ICOs, I think in my understanding is that if these companies are creating tokens that if you participate, and let me try to explain this, very complex. Okay, let's assume I'm starting a company called Facebook. And my Facebook will be only successful if all of you come and create an account. And it will only be successful if you put your photographs. It's only going to be successful, you'll start using it. Now, if I create a company called Facebook, and my incentive for all of you to participate is by issuing you a token, that if you come and use my Facebook, if you're putting a photograph, if you are going to use it for your social connectivity, I'm going to give you some free tokens to start with. It is limited in supply. And later on, if my Facebook company becomes quite big and marketers wants to use this to sell the product, they must buy your token to put their marketing products. Then your token becomes of value because you have some ownership of the popularity of the token of the Facebook product. It's not an asset ownership, it's not an equity ownership. By virtue of being the first supporter of Facebook, virtue of the first supporter of my product, you have got some token which you can exchange with the participant of my Facebook product, and that economic value it creates, and you can exchange that value. In my simplistic mind, that's what ICO should look like. Not creating an equity ownership, which has got a regulation to comply with. Do you agree with that construct?
I truly agree. Yeah, I mean, that's the main intention of decentralized systems. All right. And so I would say if you are a company, okay, with the mindset of decentralization, okay, ICOs is, I would say, a means to do the seed, okay, to encourage your early supporters to come in, okay, and of course with the intention that to turn these supporters into your future users,
Yes.
to use your tokens in the system, right? So
And subsequent economic value-added services
Yes.
can be traded for this token with the cash.
correct. Yes.
And I think this is in my mind how ICO should look like, but not the ICO what you see today, which is a bit of circumventing the regulations we have today.
Should we open it up? So I guess that's the right point in the debate to open it up to you. Questions, please.
Okay, I have two questions for Mr. Mohandi. Okay, the first question is actually we want to start up a exchange that provide SGD service, SGD exchange to Bitcoins, Litecoins, or Bitcoin Cash, right? So as we understand that currently there's no clear regulations on doing that, but the fact is, just now Peter also mentioned that, for example, CoinHardcore, due to some reasons, it stops accepting, the SGD cash or SGD deposits. So, can we know that is there any, clear instruction from the AMS to see whether, we can provide SGD in exchange with Bitcoin, so, for example? Okay, that's the first question. And second question is, right, if MS allows that, right, what type of business activities that the company need to register themselves on so that they can carry out this business?
I think good question. In fact, if one thing I think we are thinking very hard is that the exchanges thing. And I think my personal thinking is that, and please don't tweet me here, is that we'll learn what Japan is. I think Japan is coming with their report, hopefully, on their own experience on the exchanges. I think that will help all regulators to understand what kind of exchange regulation they must think. I think you should give the time to the regulators to really think this through thoroughly before they put something out there. Because moment you put an exchange, two things going to happen. The exchange has to identify which coin they will exchange. Moment I say this exchange is now regulated and they're going to choose Bitcoin, Ethereum, and why, the price, imagine the price of this thing. It is started legitimizing that particular coin. And that is the downside. So we got to, and that's one. Second thing is, till now, other than chain analysis and those companies, it's very hard to identify the source of these currencies.
Exactly.
And the KYC becomes the single biggest impediment for an exchange to run. So we've got to solve the KYC method.
So this KYC, is this the same as traditional financial institutions
But-
when you register, for
But
example,
at least I see you, my
forex?
friends. At least I can see you. In this, I'll see a long address which I don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
So here is the challenge for because I don't do KYC on IP addresses. I do KYC on know your customer. Actually, see them in some form. So, but I'm not telling that. I think there are companies like Chain Analysis who are working with Bitcoin, and now they got it. I think they confirmed Bitcoin. The Ethereum is somewhere there, and they can identify some ownership of who is owning what, and whether in the dark activities on this thing. Till we understand the KYC process, it's very hard for regulators to accept a proposal. You run exchange. The first question I would ask you, how do you do KYC? Most likely your answers will be not satisfactory. You have to get over that hurdle first. Second, what is your rules to choose which currency you want to exchange? Which crypto will be part of your exchange? How are you going to decide? What is your basis for making that choice? So these are the basic questions we are dealing with, but I'll say there's some light down the tunnel, and hopefully we'll get there someday.
Okay, so in other words, it is that MS is not sure what to put on the table to regulate the exchanges, right? But if what to put on the table, the different regulation rules to regulate the exchange.
Yes.
But in other words, is it safe to say that since right now we don't have such rules, we don't have such regulations, can we just go ahead and carry on the business?
I think I can't respond to that. That you can do many things in life which is not regulated. But if it affects, if you're doing a financial activity, and if it falls under some regulation, we'll come and regulate you. So you have to think hard, is it a financial activity or not?
Okay.
I hope that answers the question. Because if it's a financial activity, first thing you have to prove me, how did you verify your customer? And if you can't verify, you know what happens.
Okay, I get it. Thanks.
Yeah, the question is to Dr. Gupta. On one side, we look at the regulation and the desire to have the KYC. And the other side, we heard from the technology perspective that the drive is trying to push for anonymity. We see instances like there is an embargo on Iran. We see instances like there is an embargo on North Korea. We see like Turkish lira going 30% down. So all these factors, I feel, will drive. There would be countries which would be supporting cryptocurrencies left and right. Now, will the technology be able to support it? Because I think one of the challenges I feel in the technology is the size of the currency. Even if you take 1 hour to generate one transaction, say in Bitcoin, but if you're selling oil and you're selling millions of dollars of oil, do you, at today, 2018, do you predict that it will become a viable currency, considering that there would be countries which would push for it, no matter what? And they want anonymity. They want KYC not to happen. And they want to do transaction because they want a currency, because de facto currency is US dollar. And if US dollar is not allowed, then will these countries have the technology to push through?
Okay, well, I'm not sure whether I'm the right person to answer that question. I have no clue about the political aspect of things as of now. But I get your point. Originally, the idea of Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency is not this 2008 Bitcoin. The idea was way, way back. It was my year of birth, 1984. Something called DigiCash came into play. There was a cryptographer called David Chaum who came up with DigiCash. The idea was privacy, through and through. Whether there is an authority or not, privacy is one of the basic concerns. So we see the same rise of privacy and anonymity even in terms of the internet, where there is a layer called this dark web or the deep web, depends on the way you perceive it, which is accessible through protocols like Tor or onion routing protocols. You can go in, mask your IP, and do a parallel internet, essentially, over what you have on top of this IP-based internet. Similar to that, this is essentially a parallel transaction platform. Can you stop barter from happening if two consenting adults do a barter? Probably not, unless you have a regulation on the places where they reside. So can you stop a cryptocurrency from being a medium of exchange between two parties? Technically speaking, strictly technically speaking, no. But talking about the connection with the physical world, if it were entirely digital, no issue. But if you were to buy some illegal drugs with Bitcoin, the Bitcoin framework is digital, but the drugs are not. They are really physical quantity, and they have a transport route, they have to be produced, and so on and so forth. So you can stop at that point. If you want to convert your cash into Bitcoin, the point to regulate and the point to choke it is the exchange, because that's where you're converting cash into Bitcoin. If you're mining, then mining requires a lot of electricity nowadays. To point of choke it, either by regulation or just by driving a higher electricity price, it would just not be sustainable. So there are points which can be choked to collapse the network altogether. But if there are backers and takers of the coin, technically, again, strictly technically speaking, no, you can't do that. If there are people who want to trade in this, they will. So that's a big conundrum that the governments are facing now. How do you ban Bitcoin? Technically, you cannot ban Bitcoin. There is no way you can do that. You can ban the individuals residing within the governance of your country not to convert fiat currency into Bitcoin, or vice versa. So then you cut it off at the source, or you do not let them mine and generate the currency, then you are stopping it. Or you do not let them exchange it with merchants by putting merchant regulations that you cannot accept Bitcoin as a legal tender. So these are the ways you can, let me put it in maybe one sentence. You can separate the whole system from the current legalized framework. You cannot make it collapse. If separating it from the legal framework automatically makes you lose interest in that, it would collapse, but not down to zero. It would collapse down to the original takers who started it in 2010, 11, around that point, when there was no value in it, but still they wanted it just because of the liberty of having a parallel economy. They would still use it. Does that answer your question? Yeah, thanks.
So that's why Sourav explains better.
I just want to understand, because from a layman point of view, right, Bitcoin itself, right, in the future, is something of real value, or is this very speculative? On the basis that what you mentioned, that to buy a coffee, it takes 1 hour. And I'm not going to do that, right? I'd rather use DBS, PayPal, and straight away do it. So to me, is it really speculative right now? Is it really a real value in future or not?
Okay, so where Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies come to play is the power of the network effect. When more people, I'll take a more simplistic, like Facebook. Why is it so powerful? When more people use it, basically Facebook is worthwhile because of the number of users. And more users use Facebook, you tell your friends use Facebook, in turn your friends will use Facebook. So same thing like for Bitcoin from a very layman perspective. When more people believe in it, because fueled by, I would say, sudden surge in prices, media reports, friendly regulations, more people put their trust in it. But contrary to that, most people who hold Bitcoin would not want to spend it. For me, I'll take it as a store of value, or probably I will trade it. I will trade altcoins with the objective of accumulating more Bitcoin. As a store of value. So some people have that mindset rather than spending it. For me, it will still exist no matter whether regulations are in play as an alternative form, alternative financial system. That's for me. And I see it more as a commodity, or we put it in simple terms, digital gold. Gold has a place to play, okay, although we have a very sound financial system, but gold is very hard to transport. Of course, we have other sexier, I would say, more interesting financial vehicles that use gold, okay, like gold ETFs and all that. People can do spot trading, right? So similar to, I would say, commodities, okay, Bitcoin has also a place as a commodity, as a store of value, not so much as a medium of exchange. Probably if you want to transfer large amounts of Bitcoin, but for small 0.001 Bitcoin, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to exchange at this point of time. That's where other cryptocurrencies, okay, will have a place, okay, to replace Bitcoin in that aspect.
Okay, I'm just thinking from a layman again and say, in the past, right, I mean, maybe 2-3 years ago, people went to Bitcoin because people come to understand that you can use it to buy anything, pay anything. It's so convenient. That's why people go in. But now it seems that it's not going to be the case. Then is there a real value? It's the most, to me, it's speculation, right? To a certain extent.
So the question is that if we are holding Bitcoin, why would we not want to spend it? It's actually more convenient.
No, question is
Yeah.
that whether if
Yeah.
I want to have this, I want it to be usable. I want to go
Okay.
to anywhere in the world. I can just use it. I can, I don't have to wait for 1 hour
Yeah.
to get my coffee.
Answer is no,
Yeah.
in my mind, because it doesn't own it. It's not backed by any. It's not a legal tender. It is not a stored value in any sense, because a stored value is there where I can come back. It's still $10. It may become something else. So by the time you come back home, and it is not a medium exchange in a more pervasive way. So I think my simplistic temporary answer to you is, I use the word temporary because you never know how technologists will change the thing. So is that it is indeed not a true currency in any sense.
Yeah. The other thing is that, all the hypes and so forth, like, I know ICOs and so forth. So, ICO and so on. A lot of people don't understand what it is. Right? The marketing point is that, okay, you invest in, hopefully in 1 year's time, you go to $1, $2, and so forth, right? And they always talk about blockchain technology. Whether it's really blockchain behind it, I do not know. Or whether it's like, in order to verify, it's like you need to have miners to actually look at it, and whether they're actual miners for other currency, coins itself. So it's very,
It's a mis-selling
yeah,
in many.
yeah.
But I think this is a question, Sourav, for audience general benefit. You cannot separate crypto tokens from blockchain, fundamentally. It has to be associated with blockchain. If somebody says I'm issuing a token or a crypto token, the underlying expectation is, as in your 4 pillars of must-have, blockchain. In fact, all the time you moved from Litecoin to all this thing, you never change the blockchain piece. It is always remaining as a true characteristics of a cryptocurrency. Is it a fair statement to say?
I would say yes. So from a cryptocurrency point of view, the underlying technology is blockchain. From an industry point of view, people are moving a little. So Corda is technically not a blockchain. There is no chain of block per se, but there are channels. So is in Hyperledger. Headed a hash graph as well. So these are different data structures of storing what you own, what you see as a ledger. So the ledger, right now the technical term for it is distributed ledger technology. Okay. So that DLT, keep that word in mind, maybe search in Wikipedia. DLT, distributed ledger technology, is the object of sustenance. That's going to sustain. That has many values. Blockchain is one form of
DLT.
Distributed ledger.
Absolutely.
There could be others, but that's a backbone. That's a backbone.
So it's talk about distributed ledger. That means there could be no verifier as well, right? Like what you have the mining.
Yes, of course.
Understand. Thank you.
I think that's a great question. I think thanks for asking.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, perhaps a question for Dr. Sourav. While Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, there is a limit to the total number that can be issued, right? But is it the case that because anybody could create digital currencies, then basically digital currency cannot have a value because it's unlimited? Anybody can create a new digital currency. So your Bitcoin plus, blah, blah, blah. There could be a lot of it. So looking at it in the long run, all of these will have zero value because it's unlimited.
Great question. So first, what the question comes from is a demand matching with scarcity is what gives value. That's what you understand from a valuation point of view. So if there is a demand, that's what we are creating. You trade in Bitcoin, you create Bitcoin demand, right? And there is a scarcity. The scarcity in Bitcoin is built in. So to be technically precise, roughly 21 million Bitcoin is the limit. 21 million Bitcoin is roughly the limit of Bitcoin. You won't get any more than that in the Bitcoin economy. That has been hard-coded into the core code of Bitcoin. Where are we now? We are more than 17 million. So get a sense of that. We are more than 17 million in a 21 million economy. That's the first thing. When do we not generate any more Bitcoin? That comes from the mining perspective. Tentatively, we stopped generating Bitcoin from mining in 2140. So 122 years from now. We keep on generating Bitcoin till that point. Then how is it possible? We are at 17 million, we have 21 million, so that's about 4 millions to go. And we have 122 years, but it already started only back, say 10 years back. The idea is a half-life. Right now, the mining value is 12.5, as I showed you. In 2020, roughly, it will be half, 6.25. Then in 2024, so every 4 years, it halves. So if you look at a graph, it will saturate very soon. Once it starts saturating and you still want these miners to perform you a service by maintaining that ledger, it becomes tremendously costly for them because they have invested in specialized hardware to mine Bitcoin. If there is no gain out of it, they would lose the incentive, which is a crucial element in Bitcoin. So to keep the incentive, what the miners are trying to do right now and would do forever is to hike the transaction fee. So when I said that $170 was split in 120 and a 50, I was not entirely correct. It's split in 120 and maybe a 47, and you leave that $3 for the miner to pick up. Officially, now the minimum that you want to spend for a transaction fee is roughly 1 by 10 to the power 8. So 1 after 10 zeros of a Bitcoin. That's a minimum, official standard. But if you do not pay enough transaction fees, your transaction is not going to be recorded in the ledger very soon. The miners look into all the transactions being circulated and pick and choose the ones with the highest transaction fee. That's a natural trait. You would always do that. This will become more and more prominent over time. So if this becomes at a level where your normal transaction fee from sending 1 Bitcoin from here to US becomes more than what you do through, say, companies like Wells Fargo or some other company like DBS, let's say, you would probably lose interest in Bitcoin at that point, unless it's an asset. So that's a big issue. But there are coins and cryptocurrencies which do not have a limited supply. Technically, Ethereum doesn't have a limited supply. That's a token, and they keep on generating the token because that's the fuel for their base. So that doesn't really have a limited supply. Most of the cryptocurrencies that you see in the market create that artificial limitation to create that scarcity. It doesn't have to be. It's more what Peter said. It's your acceptability of the coin that raises the value, in effect.
So can I quickly, I know we're running out of time, quickly interject here. For an Ethereum kind of model where they're representing certain market value in these companies, they're creating a future services, will that value be tagged to the value of the underlying company where they're supposed to exchange against? Will that drive that price in the utility token bucket?
That I do not know of. That's a possibility to tie it with the asset class of this company's asset in some sense, and then to back it by almost as we do for stocks nowadays. If that happens, that would still retain a value, naturally. But it would be fragmented, as the stocks also fragment and so on and so forth. But I do not know that for sure. I do not think anyone knows that for sure, what the valuation would be.
Can I ask a quick question? How many of you still have questions? Can I ask the panel, can you give us a stay back for another 10 minutes? Now, the thing is this, the buses leave at 9 o'clock. So those who are taking buses, you can leave first. The rest can stay back. I think they can offer you another 10 minutes. If you don't mind, you can ask questions. How about that? Okay, this is a bit special. I think a lot of you have a lot of questions you want to ask. And we want to disappoint you also. So while they are, maybe give someone a chance. While they are moving out, those who have questions, can you just raise your hand? Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, I'm a little confused between like ICO. I mean, I heard about ICO, initial coin offering, things like that. And are they actually equivalent to cryptocurrency, or are they actually token, but I'm not sure how are they being used in the first place?
Okay, I think, okay, so initial coin offering or initial token offering, interchangeable terms, right? So in a very layman is a company actually want to raise funds, but via a cryptocurrency by issuing tokens. Of course, whether these tokens have value or not, okay, is very dependent on the future, of course, prospects, whether this company actually really produce a product or services, because most of these companies are doing ICO, especially in 2017. Basically, they only have a white paper, like a proposal, but they don't have actual services, actual products, MVP, okay, to support. They only have a dream, I would say a proposal. Okay, so that's where we don't really use the term investors, but more of the term as supporters. These are supporters that support these ICO projects, and in return, okay, for receiving, so most of, how do you fund an ICO? How do you take part in an ICO? Usually you use Ethereum or Bitcoin. You don't use fiat to participate, because this is talking about a cryptocurrency or blockchain. We don't use fiat. Okay, you actually have Ethereum. Okay, you fund this company who is raising an ICO. In return, you get their native tokens. Okay, in return for that. So, but these tokens can be traded in future when they list on the exchange. Could be a decentralized exchange, could be a centralized exchange, but most often they are not regulated, like Binance, which is actually located in Malta. Yeah. Okay, so more or less, I hopefully you clarify.
There were other questions. Yeah.
Hello. My questions are a bit technical, maybe. So I want to ask mainly about two things. The first one you just now mentioned is the Hyperledger, and what's the difference between the Hyperledger and the usual ledger in a sense? Because what I read is actually it does not have any difference really.
Hyperledger and?
Hyperledger and the like Bitcoin.
The Bitcoin blockchain?
Blockchain, yeah. And
Okay, so a few points, maybe, I mean, if that clarifies. So the Bitcoin blockchain is created with the advent of Bitcoin in 2009. So there was a Genesis block created, and that's a blockchain that's been maintained so far by the miners. There are a few regulations and rules in that specific blockchain. One is you follow the longest path that survives, so that's a proof of work kind of a concept, and so on. How big the blocks could be, what is the rule that connects the blocks, and so on and so forth. Hyperledger is, on the other hand, an abstraction out of the blockchain concept. So think of it this way. Hyperledger or Ethereum, think of it not as a data structure per se. Think of it more like as an operating system. It's an operating system like Android, on which you can design the basic platform on which you want to develop the applications. You can design your own Hyperledger network. So network doesn't need to be a flat network like Bitcoin. It can be a hierarchical network, exactly how companies operate. It could be multiple companies coming together in a consortium. You can design a network like that. Create a network of your own. Create a digital vault for storing all the transactions. Doesn't need to be a single blockchain either. You can talk with channels where a few parts of the network are connected via channels, not the entire network. You do not have to flood the transactions. You can create all these things, define all these things, and create a Hyperledger application platform. Then, when you come to developing an application, you start from thinking that application, right? Suppose you have to develop an application for flight booking. You think of, okay, so I write the application in Java or Python. How do I start with this? How do I go down? Which platform do I write for? Android or Linux or Mac? Or what kind of compatibility you look at? So you talk to the company, figure out their route, what they want to do with it. So that's a whole development zone. That's a system integration zone of blockchain. You're using the concept, but you have far developed beyond what just blockchain is.
Can I just push you a little here? Just on behalf of my the person who has a question. If in the Hyperledger, if there's a pre-agreed consensus on how to operate in your definition of operating system, does it defeat the whole notion of distributed, independent, no rule-based process? No, rule-based but independent in a sense, because now you're preferring a club.
Oh yes.
And the club has club membership fees, and there's a superman in the club who kind of decides some rules above other rules. Does it defeat the notion of distributed in some sense?
Yes. So we started off with distributed ledgers. When we say entirely distributed, it means it's essentially a democracy where everyone has a single vote and everybody's vote was the same, be it the PM or be it you. That's not what Bitcoin even is right now. It's decentralized. That means there is not one party controlling it, but a consortium of parties controlling it, which is the miners. As it happens with democracy in a lot of parts of the world, any democracy, if you let it flourish, it migrates towards plutocracy.
Anarchy.
Which is maybe not anarchy, maybe towards plutocracy first, maybe, where the more money you have, the more chances are that you will win and that you will vote. Same story happened with Bitcoin. So now Hyperledger has taken the essence and said, well, if that so happens, why not create a club and let them play by rules? Why do you even open it up for
and there's a PM in that club.
Oh yes, there is.
And the PM has got an upper hand on the rules they set. So just to echo your point of how this whole Hyperledger has shifted the spirit of Sakamoto.
To some extent, it hasn't entirely, if you are not, so suppose, think of this. Okay, I should probably mention this from a technical point of view as well. When I look at blockchain as it is in Bitcoin from a technical side, what fascinates me, there are two aspects which fascinates me. One is the incentive mechanism. The design of the incentive mechanism is ingenious. That's something that has solved a lot of problems, this proof of work and so on. That's one. The second is consensus between parties who do not have trust in any individual, but are willing to trust the majority, believing that the majority is honest. So if you do not have a lack of trust in a platform, then you really do not need blockchain. It could have been solved using something else. So if it's in an organization, like say within NTU, and you have a student exchange program maintained by blockchain, within NTU, it doesn't make sense because we have a trust-based systems anyway. We have a hierarchy, we do trust each other. But put together NTU, NUS, SUTD, SMU. Now you have got conflict. As soon as you have a conflict, that's called a consortium in Hyperledger dictum or in Corda dictum. So if you call that kind of a setup, then the consensus rules again come into play. So if it's the PM who controls everything, within Singapore, you probably don't need it. But go to UN, you need it. Because you have conflict of interest. Does it answer your question?
Yeah. And yeah, the one other thing, now there is also something alternative called POS, proof of stakes, as a change of the proof of work. And it starts as early as 2018 in Ethereum, I suppose. And how do you think about it? Yeah, thank you.
Proof of stake is a wonderful concept to get out of this weird madness of just compute to generate things. That's good. That's a good part. The bad part, it's really hard to solve a forking issue. So when you create the forks in a proof of stake, for miners not to stay within a fork and follow the longest fork and so on. So if you want the more technical details, go into Ethereum wiki. They have a proof of stake, which they are coming up with. And they say exactly how they solved that issue of this fork and then how to mine it. So in a standard terms, when you say the proof of work, you meant most of the people who voted for the longest chain will survive. Because most people put in much amount of work in that. So it's a proof of work. Proof of stake is the chain which has more stakeholders or more money in it or more tokens in it, that's the one that's going to survive. So it's almost like you get to vote based on how much stake you have in the overall blockchain framework, not how much work you do. So it's more stake that you have on it, not more work. There are others, by the way. There's something called proof of importance. In a token or an ICO, or I don't know how to call it, it's called NEM, N-E-M. They use proof of importance in a network. So you could put it on top of Facebook and say, well, the most influential person in this Facebook graph is going to have the say on which blocks go up. And you can design a proof of something in several ways. There's proof of space, proof of this, loads of things. Yeah, but yeah.
We can hear you. I wonder about the issue of KYC. So what kind of technological developments do you expect in KYC? It's an interesting concept because 100 years ago you could travel anywhere without a passport. Now you need a government, basically a government document. But there are parts of the world where babies don't get birth certificates. I mean, they don't really have that. In Singapore, our thumbprint is everywhere. But so far, I can't go into the bank and just give them my thumbprint. They won't take that. They want some other form of verification. How do you see this KIC? If I have cash or if I have diamonds, I can go anywhere and spend them and nobody really knows who I am. So this is, I don't know how we're going to do it. As far as I know, you can still go to a Bitcoin in Singapore ATM and take some money out, and there's nobody, you don't have to put a thumbprint or anything. How is this going to evolve in terms of managing that?
I think there are two parts to the question. Is today banks do KYC. Thankfully, Singapore, if you are not, go and use MyInfo. You don't need to show your face in the branch anymore. You can open an account using the trusted data. That's how you do KYC. KYC represents you. Let's say in Singapore case, your SingPass can be used with the trusted data of MyInfo. You don't show up in front of the bank, and you can open a bank account. Why? The SingPass, which represents you, is trusted. MyInfo, which is a Singapore national database for citizens to have the trusted data, it sends the data to the bank. Bank sees all your data. It says verified by the trusted data. We open account. That's how KYC operates. There's a data, there's an identity, which represents that identity. In this mechanism, what you have is an address. It's a long address, and that particular has got an IP address in some sense. Now the challenge for us that who is behind this IP, we don't know. And I think there are alternate technology being pushed as an example, I took a chain analysis company who now can trace down, I believe in the Bitcoin space and some amount of Ethereum platform to the ownership, not exactly ownership. It talks about where they're located, where they're originated, and what they're doing in reasonably well in that space. They don't really identify the person. They identify the activity and the location, and they can say reasonably well, this is sitting in Russia doing something funny. Narrow down. So that's all that has happened in the technology development in the space of identifying the ownership of that particular address. Anything you want to add beyond this?
No, I mean that's more or less it. You do not exactly know where things. So maybe can we take 2 minutes for something?
I think if you have any other question, maybe we can just stay away and talk to the panelists, and then
I'll just show something, a quick thing.
Quick one, and then
that would be an easy option for us to see. Do we have this at all? Okay. So you asked earlier, where do you see all the transactions? So that's a website that shows everything. The whole blockchain ledger, if you want to. It's called blockchain.info. Those are your blocks being mined right now. If you refresh, those are the blocks. So go into any of these blocks right here. Those are your block details. These are your transactions. Remember the first transaction I showed, generated from nowhere, is this one. Generated from thin air. You've got this, there's a 12.5 plus the transaction fees. Now what Mr. Mohanty just mentioned is, you could do something like a chain analysis. So look at this, there are 4 entities, whatever they are, transferring money to this guy. You can go back and look into one of these and see where did they get the money from. And then go back from there to see where they got the money from. And you can go on doing this forever. All right, not forever, because it's only 1 terabyte of data. So with the data mining techniques that we have now, it doesn't take much longer to find out exact trace of the money. So it just traces down the route, and that's how you solve an anonymity issue to some extent. Then you hope one of those links will connect you to the real world. So all those are just numbers, right? You do not have a physical location. Now, if I am on Tor as a network and I do this, it doesn't connect to my IP, but there is someone foolish in my network, the crime network, who is foolish enough not to use that and use their own public IP record on their public laptop. And I would probably connect at that point, hey, this guy sits in Singapore, and I'll narrow down to that IP and I'll say, well, it has some connection. So the idea of privacy in general is if you're hidden amongst a whole room, you had a lot of privacy. Now half of you have left, so you have less privacy. If you are one-to-one talking to me, you have no privacy. So if I narrow down sufficiently, your privacy is gone. That's the overall idea in this kind of cases.
And just to add to fun to his explanation, if somebody somehow in this chain has exchanged it to a cash,
Oh yes, that's gone.
that's gone.
Because you have to go through exchanges and you know you have to follow KYC.
And then you identify the,
If we can't do KYC on blockchain, right? But we actually can do KYC with the customers who is actually
no, yeah.
So you're doing it at the initial point or the final point. You are either converting fiat to Bitcoin, there you do a KYC, or you do the other way
But
around.
you have to prove your source of fund, where you got from.
Yeah, so we have to check with them, right? To where does the money
So then now you end up in the chain of human beings
And then you can start tracing back.
tracing back.
That's what law enforcement would do. That's what law enforcement does to find out
And
something.
that's very complex.
Anyone got hit by WannaCry, the malware? Unfortunately, no. Hope not, thankfully. So that WannaCry or any kind of malware ransomware nowadays would post a Bitcoin address. And it's the first thing to look at. Where does it originate from? Where is it operating? Can I stop that? Can I find it? And you do similar kind of an analysis. Standard.
Well, we have overrun by 21 minutes. Let's give our panelists, our speaker, an hour. Of course, if you have any other question, you can step in and talk to the gentleman here. So before you go, I would like to present some token of appreciation to our speakers and panelists.
I was hoping you'll get Bitcoin.
Thank you very much. And thanks so much.
No Bitcoin.
No Bitcoin.
But you don't consider it an asset.
Yeah, I think it's
The one in the background, which is
come here. Come here.